I am reading Graham Greene's The Comedians. This was published in 1966. It's the story of three men. The comedians are Mr. Smith, the presidential candidate, or he was once, Mr. Jones, who calls himself Major Jones, and Mr. Brown, who tells the story. They met on a cargo ship on their way to Port-au-Prince in Haiti. Mr. Smith and wife have left now, and here is Mr. Brown, who tells the story, having a conversation with Mr. Jones. I'm in the third part, and it's Roman 1, and I'm halfway through. You were never a welcome guest, Mr. Jones. I had too many inquiries about you. Jones looked at me, but I could give him little help. Captain, I said, you know how they treat prisoners here. Surely you can stretch a rule? His white nightshirt, embroidered around the neck and cuffs, perhaps by that formidable wife of his, had a horribly judicial air. He looked down at us from the height of his bunk, as from a bench. Mr. Brown, he said, I have my career to consider. I must return here every month. Do you think that at my age the company would give me another command on another route after an indiscretion such as you propose? Jones said, I'm sorry, I never thought of that, with a gentleness which surprised. I think the captain just as much as it surprised me, for when the captain spoke again, it was almost as though he were offering an excuse. I do not know whether you have a family, Mr. Jones, but I certainly have. No, I have no one, Jones admitted, no one at all, unless you count a bit of tail here and there. You're right, Captain, I'm expendable. I'll have to sort this out some other way. He brooded a little while. We watched him, then suddenly suggested, I could stow away if you'd turn a blind eye. In that case, I would have to hand you over to the police in Philadelphia. Does that suit you, Mr. Jones? I have an idea there are people in Philadelphia who want to ask you questions. It's nothing serious. Oh, I owe a little money, that's all. Of your own? On second thoughts, perhaps it wouldn't suit me all that well. I admired Jones' calm. He might have been a judge himself, sitting in chambers with two experts in a tricky chancery case. The choice of action seems to be strictly limited. He summed the problem up. Then I would suggest, again, the British Embassy, the captain said in the chill voice of one who always knows the correct answer and expects no disagreement. You're probably right. I didn't get on with the consul in Leopoldsville very well, that's the truth. And they all come out of the same stable, career out of diplomatic bag. I'm afraid they'll have a report on me here too. It's a problem, isn't it? You really would be bound to hand over to the coppers in Philadelphia? I'd be bound to. It's just as short as it's long, isn't it? He turned to me. What about some other embassy where there'd be no report? These things are governed by diplomatic rules, I said. They couldn't claim a foreigner had the right of asylum. They'd be stuck with you for keeps as long as this government lasted. Steps came rattling up the companionway. A hand knocked on the door. I saw Jones catch his breath. He wasn't nearly so calm as he tried to show. Come in. The second officer entered. He looked at us without surprise, as though he expected to find strangers. He spoke to the captain in Dutch, and the captain asked him a question. He replied with his eyes on Jones. The captain turned to us as though he had at last abandoned the hope of Magray. For the night, he put his book down. He said, "There's a police officer at the gangway with 3 men. They want to come on board." Jones gave a deep, unhappy sigh. Perhaps he was watching Sahib House and the 18th hole and the desert island bar disappearing forever. The captain gave an order in Dutch to the second officer who left the cabin. He said, "I must get dressed." He balanced shyly on the edge of the bunk like a housefrau, then heavily descended. "You are letting them come on board," Jones exclaimed. "Where's your pride? This is Dutch territory, isn't it?" "Mr. Jones, if you will please go into the toilet and keep quiet, it will be easier for all of us." I opened the door at the end of the bunk and pushed Jones through it. He went reluctantly. "I'm trapped here," he said, "like a rat," then altered the phrase quickly to "a rabbit, I mean," and gave me a frightened smile. I sat him firmly down, like a child, on the lavatory seat. The captain was pulling his trousers on and tucking in his nightshirt. He took a uniform jacket off a peg and put it on. The nightshirt was concealed by the collar. "You're not going to let them search," I protested. He had no time to reply or to put on his shoes and socks before the knock came on the door. I knew the police officer who entered. He was a real bastard, as bad as any of the Tontong Makut, a man as big as Dr. Maigot, and one who wielded a terrific punch. Many broken jaws and footprints testified to his strength. His mouth was full of gold teeth, probably not his own. He carried them as an Indian brave used to carry scalps. He looked at us both with insolence, while the second officer, a pimply youth, hovered nervously behind. He said to me the words like an insult, "I know you." The little captain looked very vulnerable in his bare feet, but he replied with spirit, "I don't know you." "What are you doing on board at this hour?" the policeman said to me. The captain said in French to the second officer, so that his meaning was clear to everyone, "I thought I told you he was to leave his gun behind." "He refused, sir. He pushed me on one side." "Refused? Pushed?" The captain drew himself up and almost reached the Negro's shoulder. "I invited you on board, but only on conditions. I'm the only man allowed to carry arms on this ship. You are not in Haiti now." That phrase, spoken with conviction, really disconcerted the officer. It was like a magic spell. He felt unsafe. He looked around at all of us. He looked around the cabin. "Pa Tahiti?" he exclaimed. And I suppose he saw only the unfamiliar, a framed certificate on the wall for saving life at sea, a photograph of a grim white woman with iron grey waves in her hair, a stone bottle of something called Bols, a photograph of the Amsterdam canals, icebound in winter. He repeated distractedly, "Pas Haiti? Vous êtes en Hollande," the captain said with a masterly laugh as he held out his hand. "Give me your revolver." "I'm under orders," the bully said miserably. "I'm doing my duty." "My officer will return it to you when you leave the ship." "But I'm looking for a criminal." "Not in my ship. He came here in your ship. I'm not responsible for that. Now give me your revolver." "I must search. You can search all you like on shore, but not here. Here I am responsible for law and order. Unless you give me your revolver, I shall call the crew to disarm you, and afterwards I will have you pitched into the harbour." The man was beaten. His eye was drawn to the disapproving face of the captain's wife as he unbuttoned his holster and handed over his gun. The captain put it in her charge. "Now," he said, "I am prepared to answer any reasonable questions. What is it you want to know?" "We want to know if you have a criminal on board. You know him, a man called Jones. Here is a passenger list, if you can read." His name will not be on it. "I have been captain on this line for 10 years. I stick to the letter of the law. I will never carry a passenger who is not on that list, nor a passenger without an exit visa. Has he an exit visa?" "No." "Then I can promise you, Lieutenant, that he will never be a passenger on this ship." The sound of his rank seemed to mollify the police officer a little. "He may be hidden," he said, "without your knowledge. In the morning before sailing I will have the ship searched, and if he is found, I shall put him ashore." The man hesitated. "If he's not here," he said, "he must have gone to the British Embassy." "It would be a more natural place," the captain said, "than the Royal Netherlands Steamship Company." He handed the revolver to the second officer. "You will give it him," he said, "at the foot of the gangway." He turned his back and left the officer's black hand floating in midair like a catfish in an aquarium. We waited in silence until the second officer returned and told the captain that the lieutenant had driven away with his men. Then I let Jones out of the lavatory. He was effusively grateful. "You were superb, Captain," he said. The captain regarded him with dislike and contempt. He said, "I told him only the truth. If I had discovered your stowing away, I would have put you on the shore. I'm glad I did not have to lie. I would have found it hard to forgive myself, or you. Please, leave my ship as soon as it is safe." He removed his jacket. He pulled his white nightshirt out of his trousers so that he could remove them with modesty. We went away. Outside, I leant over the rail and looked at the policeman, who had returned to the foot of the gangway. He was last night's policeman. There was no sign of the lieutenant or his men. I said, "It's too late now for the British Embassy. It will be well guarded by this time." "What do we do then?" "God knows, but we will have to leave the boat. If we are still here in the morning, the captain will be as good as his word." The purser, who woke quite cheerfully from his sleep, he was lying flat on his back when we entered with a lubricious smile on his face, saved the situation. He said, "There is no difficulty about Mr. Brown leaving. The policeman knows him already. But there is only one solution for Mr. Jones. He must leave as a woman." "But the clothes?" I asked. "There is an acting box here for the ship's parties. We have the dress of a Spanish señorita and a pheasant costume from Volendam." Jones said piteously, "But my moustache." "You must shave it off." Neither the Spanish costume, which was designed for a flamenco dancer, nor the elaborate headgear of the Dutch peasant was inconspicuous. We tried our best to make an unobtrusive mixture of the two, jettisoning the Volendam headgear and the wooden sabots of the one and the mantilla of the other, as well as a great many underskirts in both cases. Meanwhile, Jones gloomily and painfully shaved. There was no hot water. Oddly enough, he looked more reliable without his moustache. It was as though before he had been wearing an incorrect uniform. Now I could almost believe in his military career. Odder still, when once the great sacrifice had been made, he entered with a kind of expert enthusiasm into the spirit of the charade. "You have no rouge or lipstick?" he asked the purser. But the purser had none, and Jones had to make do for cosmetics with a stick of Remington pre-shave powder. It gave him, above the black Volendam skirt and the spangled Spanish blouse, a look of lurid pallor. As for at the foot of the gangway, he told the purser, "You must kiss me. It will help to hide my face." "Why not kiss Mr. Brown?" the purser asked. "He's taking me home. It wouldn't be natural. You will have to imagine that we've passed quite an evening together, all three of us." "What kind of an evening?" "An evening of riotous abandonment," Jones said. "Can you manage your skirt?" I asked. Of course, old man, he added mysteriously. "This is not the first time. Under very different circumstances, of course." He went down the gangway on my arm. The skirts were so long that he had to gather them in one hand like a Victorian lady picking her way across a muddy street. The ship's sentry stared at us aghast. He hadn't known there was a woman on board, and such a woman too. Jones, as he passed the sentry, gave him an appraising and provocative glance from his brown eyes. I noticed how fine and bold they looked now, below his shawl. They had been killed by the moustache. At the foot of the gangway he embraced the purser and left him smudged on both cheeks with pre-shave powder. The policeman watched us with dulled curiosity. It was obvious that Jones was not the first woman to leave the boat in the early hours, and he could hardly have appealed to any man acquainted with the girls at Mère Catherine's. We walked slowly arm in arm to the place where I had left my car. "You are holding your skirt too high," I warned him. "I was never a modest woman, old man. I mean, the flick can see your shoes." "Not in the dark." I would have never believed our escape could prove so easy. No footstep followed us. The car was there, unwatched. Peace and Columbus reigned over the night. I sat and thought while Jones arranged his skirt. He said, "I played Boadicea once in a skirt to amuse the fellows. I had royalty in the audience." "Royalty?" "Lord Mountbatten. Those were the days. Would you mind lifting your leg? My skirt's caught." "Where do we go from here?" I said. "Search me. The man I wrote the introduction to, he is dossing down in the Venezuelan embassy. It's the most heavy guarded of the lot. They have half the general staff there. I'd be quite satisfied with something more modest. Perhaps you wouldn't be taken in. You aren't exactly a political refugee, are you? Doesn't deceiving Papa Doc count as resistance? Perhaps you wouldn't be welcome as a permanent guest. Have you thought of that?" They'd hardly push me out, would they, if I were once safely in? I think one or two of them might even do that. I started the engine and we began to drive slowly back into the town. I didn't wish him to I didn't wish to give him the impression of flight. I watched before every turn for the light of another car, but Port-au-Prince was as empty as a cemetery. Where are you taking me? To the only place I can think of, the Ambassador's Way. I felt relief as we mounted the hill. There would be no roadblock on this side of the familiar turning. At the gates, a policeman looked briefly into the car. He knew my face, and Jones passed easily enough for a woman when the dashboard light was out. Obviously, there had not yet been a general alarm. Jones was only a criminal. He was not a patriot. They had probably warned the roadblocks and put some tonton macoutes around the British embassy. With the Medea covered, and probably my hotel too, they must think they had him cornered. I told Jones to stay in the car, and I rang the bell. Somebody was awake, for I could see a light burning in a window on the ground floor. Yet I had to ring twice, and I waited with impatience as heavy steps came down from a long way inside, ponderous and unhurried. A dog yapped and whined. I was puzzled by the noise, for I had never seen a dog in the house. Then a voice. I suppose that it was the night's porters. Asked who was there. Said, I want Signora Pineda. Tell her it is Monsieur Brown. Something urgent. The door was unlocked, unbolted, and then unchained. But the man who threw it open was not the porter. The ambassador himself stood there, peering myopically. He was in his shirt sleeves, and he wore no tie. I had never before seen him less than immaculate. Beside him, on guard, was a horrible miniature dog, all long grey hair, the shape of a centipede. You want my wife? He said. She's asleep. Seeing his tired and wounded eyes, I thought, he knows. He knows everything. Do you want me to wake her? He asked. Is it so urgent? She's with my son. They are both asleep. I said lamely and ambiguously, I didn't know that you had returned. I came in on tonight's plane. He put up his hand to where his tie should have been. There's a lot of work waiting for me to do. Papers to be read. You know how it is. It was as though he were apologizing to me and proffering me humbly his passport. Nationality, human being, special peculiarities, cuckold. I said with a sense of shame, no, please, don't wake her. It was really you I wanted to see. Me? I thought for a moment he would give way to a panic impulse, that he would retreat inside and close the door. Perhaps he believed I was about to tell him what he was afraid to hear. Won't it wait until the morning? He implored me. So late, so much to do. He felt for a cigar case which wasn't there. I think he half intended to press a bundle of cigars into my hands, as another might have pressed money, to persuade me to go. But there weren't any cigars. He said in miserable surrender, come in then if you must. I said, the dog doesn't like me. Don Juan, he rapped out an order to the miserable creature, which began to lick his shoes. I said, I have a companion, and signalled to Jones. The ambassador watched with despairing incredulity the appearance of Jones. He must still have thought that I intended to confess all and perhaps demand the breakup of his marriage, and what part, he probably demanded, could she play in the affair? Was she a witness, a nurse to look after Angel, a substitute wife? In a nightmare, anything, however cruel or grotesque, is possible, and this to him was certainly a nightmare. First out of the car came the heavy rubber-soled shoes. A pair of socks striped in scarlet and black like a school tie worn in the wrong place. Then fold after fold of blue-black skirt, and last the head and shoulders wrapped in a scarf, the Remington white face and the provocative brown eyes. Jones shook himself like a sparrow after a dust bath and advanced rapidly to join us. "This is Mr. Jones," I said. "Major Jones," he corrected me. "I'm glad to meet you, Your Excellency. He wants asylum here. The Tonton Macoute are after him. There's not a hope of getting him into the British Embassy. It's too well guarded. I thought perhaps, although he is not a South American, he is in extreme danger." A look of enormous relief spread over the ambassador's face while I spoke. This was politics. This he could deal with. This was every day. "Come in, Major Jones, come in. You are very welcome. My house is at your disposition. I will wake my wife at once. One of my rooms shall be prepared." In his relief, he threw his possessive articles around like confetti. Then he closed, locked, bolted, and chained the door, and absent-mindedly offered his arm to Jones to escort him into the house. Jones took it and moved magnificently across the hall like a Victorian matron. The horrible grey dog swept the ground beside him, with his matted hair smelling at the fringe of Jones' skirt. "Louis!" Martha stood on the landing and looked down at us with sleepy amazement. "My dear," the ambassador said, "let me introduce you. This is Mr. Jones, our first refugee." "Mr. Jones." "Major Jones." Jones corrected them both, lifting the scarf from his head as though it were a hat. Martha leant over the banisters and laughed. She laughed till her eyes filled with tears. I could see her breasts through her nightdress, and even the shadow of her hair, and so, I thought, could Jones. He smiled up at her and said, "In the Women's Army, of course," and I remembered the girl called Tintin at Mère Catherine's, who, when I asked her why she liked him, had said to me, "He made me laugh." So that was the end of Roman 1. Today is the 15th of October.